Hey y'all, it's Dr. Know-It-All. Today I want to talk to you about Tesla versus Waymo and why I think that Waymo over the next 4 or 5 years is going to look like a rounding error compared to Tesla's Robotaxi fleet. There are bumps along the road for Tesla to grow, and I'm going to explain exactly what those are, but once Tesla gets over those bumps in the road, they are going to expand incredibly rapidly, and Waymo just can't keep up. So I'm going to start with a couple of graphics. This one is just from yesterday. Thank you, Sawyer Merritt, for putting this together. So definitely follow Sawyer if you don't already. I have no idea why you don't, but follow him. He's got a lot of followers. Anyway, you can see here that the blue area is Waymo. There's a little thing out here for some reason that sticks out past Tesla's service, but Tesla is this gray area and it's pretty much swamped the Waymo service area. Now, if you recall, the geofenced area was somewhere around here for both Waymo and Tesla when Tesla started this service back in June. It was approximately this little area down here. Waymo almost immediately kind of doubled their service area and added this area in on top. I don't think it was actually there at the end of June, but anyway, they almost immediately made it larger. So it was like, well, Tesla, they have their service area, but Waymo's significantly bigger. But by now you can tell the gray area completely dwarfs the blue area. Tesla's geofenced area is significantly larger than Waymo's in the Austin area, and it only gets more significant when we look at this. This is from Joe Tegmeyer, so thank you, Joe. This is actually from a month ago, July 30th. So he posted the area that Waymo covers, which is this blue area again, compared to this dark gray area, which is what Tesla covers. So you can see that this area in particular, like Austin, it's kind of close, right? They're more or less the same. Here, Tesla completely dwarfs what Waymo is able to serve in the Bay Area. So it's a very, very large difference between the two. And here we have a post directly from Tesla Robotaxi expanding Austin service area fast. This again is from yesterday. So we have June 22nd, and that was that original area. You can see the kind of middle finger or whatever you want to call this on July 14th. So just a couple of weeks later, they expanded out to this area. And then on August 26th, they expanded to this area. They also included this information here, increased the service area from 91 to 173 square miles, so almost double the square mileage that they're covering, and also increased the number of cars available by 50%. And here's where it gets interesting, because the question is, what is 50%? 50% of what? 50% of 100? 50% of 1? We don't know. Well, Leandro Castillo was able to find information that's publicly available from, as you see here, the Austin Transportation and Public Works Commission or whatever. So the first piece of information is that we've got 15 Model Ys that were in the fleet previous to today or yesterday, August 26th. Now there are 22 Model Ys in the fleet. So that number is about 50%. That tracks correctly. That is far fewer than Waymo's vehicles. The best information I have right now from Google and from Grok is that Waymo has a fleet of about 1,500 autonomous vehicles across San Francisco, LA, Phoenix, and Austin, with plans to add 2 more Jaguar I-Paces, potentially reaching 3,500 vehicles or so. So that's the basis. We've got about 1,500 vehicles versus only 22 here in Austin. But then I had Grok go out and research it in the Bay Area, and it said there are over 100 Tesla robotaxis in the Bay Area. I don't have that from quite as firm of a source, but it does look like there were valid links to that information. So we could be looking at somewhere around 120 Tesla robotaxis out there compared to Waymo's 1,500. So an order of magnitude fewer vehicles than Waymo has on the road right now, but they're covering a larger geo-fenced area in the 2 areas in which they're playing. Obviously, Phoenix and Los Angeles, they're not playing in those areas yet. If you divide the Waymo fleet into 4, I don't think it probably operates quite that way, but if we just divided it into 4, then you'd have about 400 Waymos in each of these areas. So you'd have 22 Model Ys versus 400 Waymos in the Austin area, and you'd have somewhere around 100 Model Ys versus somewhere around 400 Waymos in the Bay Area. Now, I think the likelihood is that there are probably half of the fleet that Waymo serves is in the Bay Area, because when you go there, you can't shake a stick without seeing a Waymo. So I have a feeling that half of the Waymos probably are in the Bay Area. So we're probably looking at closer to 700 or 800 Waymos there. But anyway, you can see that Tesla is playing a game of catch up in terms of the number of vehicles they have. In order to get the Robotaxi app, you still have to be invited. So Tesla is rolling this out slowly. It's not that big yet, but Tesla's path to scaling is wide open. Once the fire hose gets turned on, it's going to go crazy. And that's what I want to really talk about for the rest of this. One other very important point here, and this is from, Texas, from Austin itself. Only one documented incident, tagged as a safety concern on the intersection of East Old Torf Street and Burton Drive. I'm not exactly sure where that is. So this would be something Austin Transportation and Public Works actually tagged as an actual incident. Now, of course, we have safety passengers in the vehicles. They can press a button and stop it, so we don't have access to that internal information. Tesla might have had 5 interventions in the last month, or they might have had hundreds per day. We don't know. The answer is probably somewhere in between those two. Also, we have some interesting information about the mileage and the number of trips that these robotaxis have taken. So they've taken about 15,000 trips in the Austin area since June 22nd. So that's a pretty reasonable number. If you guesstimate somewhere around 5 miles per trip, which I think is a reasonable estimate, you're looking at about 75,000 miles of actual, vehicles being traveled. And there's only one documented incident. So that's pretty good. That's not millions of miles per incident, but again, this is just rolling out, just getting started. Pretty impressive that there's only one documented incident in the Austin area. We don't have that much information about the Bay Area, and it hasn't been operating there as long, but it does appear that there are a lot more vehicles in the Bay Area, which makes sense because that geographical area is kind of huge. So one more note before we get to the actual scaling and why I think that Waymo is going to be a rounding error soon. In response to Sawyer Merritt's post about Uber's CEO talking about how difficult camera-only systems are, and it's really true. They are very difficult. It's pretty amazing that the Tesla team's been able to do this. But Elon responded to this saying, LiDAR and radar reduce safety due to sensor contention. This is something I have talked about many times on my channel before. I'll try to find a link and leave it up here and put it at the end of the video so you can watch that if you're interested. This is stuff I've been talking about for years, and actually you can see my response. People are arguing it's a cost thing. It never has been. It's a safety thing. Anyway, if LiDAR, radar disagree with the cameras, which one wins? That's called sensor fusion and sensor conflict or sensor contention, as he's saying. This sensor ambiguity causes increased, not decreased risk. That's why Waymos can't drive on highways. We turned off the radars in Teslas to increase safeties, cameras for the win, and our old 2020 Model Y that we sold a couple of years ago to get the 2023 one that we have, that had a radar system in it, but it got turned off at one point because Tesla did not deem it necessary anymore. It was actually causing more potential problems and more potential safety issues than just not having it at all. So as Elon says, and as I state, it's not a cost thing, it's a safety thing. The problem with having multiple different kinds of sensors is that they give you different information. Imagine if you had eyes plus a LiDAR system or something, and you're walking around and all of a sudden the LiDAR system says there's a problem, you need to adjust for this problem. Your eyes say there's no problem at all. That's going to cause an issue for your brain. It's going to be like, what's going on? Consider it something along the lines of like an optical illusion or something. You look at something and it doesn't look right and you're like, whoa, that makes no sense. And then you have to kind of look at it from the side or from the top or something to realize what's going on. So effectively what happens here is you get a multi-sensor optical illusion. You get something where the sensors don't agree with each other and they're all shaking their heads going like, we don't know what's going on. Well, when you have a couple of milliseconds to make a decision, you can't have a bunch of people sitting around trying to form a committee to figure out what's actually happening. You have to make that decision quickly. Is this difficult to do? Yes. I mean, it's taken Tesla the better part of a decade to get to a system that works with cameras only, but now that they've got it, they've basically proven that this works exceptionally well. So Tesla's producing thousands of cars per month. They could easily swamp these areas with 1,000 Tesla Robotaxis, Model Ys, as Robotaxis in Austin and in the Bay Area of San Francisco. Why haven't they done this yet? Well, it comes down to humans still, because both of those areas at present require a human occupant. In the Bay Area, it's in the driver's seat. They don't touch the wheels. By the way, I asked Google about this. I asked it to tell me how many Tesla Robotaxis there were in their autonomous fleet in the Bay Area. It refused to give me an answer. It actually said to me there are no Tesla Robotaxis operating in the Bay Area because California regulations enforced by the CPUC do not permit the public transport of passengers in fully self-driving vehicles. Tesla's recent launch in the Bay Area was for a human-operated ride-hailing service, not a fully autonomous Robotaxi service. That is complete BS. I asked it 3 different times, and at the end I said, don't be an asshat. Actually answer the question that I'm asking you. It refused. So it's giving false information because also Waymo is operating an autonomous vehicle service there. It doesn't matter if the person's sitting in the driver's seat. If they're not touching the wheel or the brakes or the accelerator, they're just a passenger just like you are in the backseat of the Robotaxi. So anyway, chalk one up to Google and some very, very bad information that it's producing. That's AI generated content, by the way. But anyway, those very humans, the ones that have to sit in the passenger seat, that in my opinion is what's stopping Tesla from scaling more rapidly at this point. If you think about it, every single car, if it's operating like 18 or 20 hours a day, requires probably 3 people to operate it. You have to have at least 2 people because they have to take shifts. You can't have somebody sit there for 18 hours a day. It's a pretty bad job to just sit there. It's just got to be an awful job. Anyway, you just sit there, you sit there, you sit there. Anyway, you work for like 9 or 10 hours. You change your shift over with the other person, and then there's pretty much got to be at least 1 spare or a half a spare per car because somebody could call in sick, or they might have to be working at the operations center where they, receive a call from a passenger and they have to extract the Tesla from some random situation or something, right? So you probably need about 3 people per vehicle. So if we've got somewhere around 120 vehicles, we're talking about 360 employees that they're having to pay, that they have to hire, that they have to give benefits to. It's very, very expensive and time consuming and taxing probably to find people to do this job. Not the most exciting job in the world. And also it doesn't really have any long-term prospects. So it's unclear whether these people are being hired just to do this job or whether they're employees of Tesla who are being repurposed for this temporarily. And that's unclear. But if they are being hired just for this job, they know it could be a matter of months before they're out of a job again. So not a very exciting job and also no future prospects for the job. So it doesn't sound like the most exciting thing in the world. But anyway, I'm strongly of the opinion it's that human element that's causing the problem with scaling at this point. Tesla just can't hire that many people. If they want 1,000 vehicles on the road, they'll probably need on the order of 3,000 employees to operate them. That's a big expense, but it's also just a pain in the butt to find those people, to hire them. If you suddenly decide in Austin you don't need those people anymore, but now you do in Phoenix, do they all move there? Do you have to fire the people in Austin and hire new people in Phoenix? It's a big old pain in the butt. So that's going to slow things down. But what happens when Tesla doesn't need those humans in the loop in any given area? So Austin has been doing this for the longest, about 2 months at this point. What happens when Austin gives them the green light to just go completely driverless? Waymos are already doing that. So certainly it's a possible thing. Once that happens, Tesla can flood the market. They can put 1,000 vehicles on overnight. They could have a ton of these Model Ys out there, which could completely dwarf not only the geographical area that Waymo is operating in, but also the number of vehicles that are operating. Remember, we kind of divided it out and decided that Austin might have about 400 Waymos in it or something. Well, Tesla could have 1,000 Tesla Robotaxis there within a couple of weeks, if and when the data shows that these vehicles are operating safely enough without human intervention that they're not needed anymore. At that point, Tesla geographically and number of vehicles wise just dominates Waymo, and then they can move to Phoenix, they can move to LA, they can keep expanding in the Bay Area, they can go to a place like Atlanta, I hope one of these days soon, they could go to Tampa, St. Pete, they could go to Salt Lake City, Utah, they, just on and on. They can go to any city that they want to as long as the regulatory approval is there, and once they don't have to have drivers in the loop, that will slow things down when they move to each new area. But once you take that out of the equation, it's like a champagne bottle uncorking, right? So you got humans keeping the pressure in. As soon as you don't need the humans anymore, it's like boom, then suddenly you can just release all of the robotaxis. And just imagine when Tesla has these cybercabs, the vehicles that are dedicated as robotaxis, the cybercabs that are just there from birth to operate that way, those will be even cheaper and even better than the current Model Ys are for the purpose of robotaxi rides. How fast can Waymo grow? Well, we saw some evidence of that. They have around 1,500 vehicles in their fleet right now, and they're looking to add 2,000 more by the end of 2026. So we're looking at a year, just call it a year, to add another 2,000 vehicles. These are the kind of numbers that Tesla could put out in a month instead of a year plus. So over time, as Tesla proves out their technology and gets more regulatory approval and those wheels get greased a little bit more, I think we will see thousands and thousands of Teslas on the streets in different areas where Waymo hasn't even gotten approval yet. And that over time, as I said at the beginning, that Waymo is going to look like a rounding error. You could have 100,000 Tesla robotaxis and you you might have 4,000 or 5,000 Waymos, that kind of number will look like a rounding error, and it all comes down to Tesla's strategy that's been in place for nearly a decade of doing camera-only based autonomous driving and putting it in every one of the cars that they've built for the last decade. That kind of foresight deserves to be rewarded, and I think it's going to be in the next couple of years. And Waymo is it's going to go from the dominant player to a very, very niche player very, very quickly as Tesla picks up the pace and figures out how to do this better and better. Alrighty, folks, those are my thoughts on the topic. Let me know in the comments what you think about all of this. While you're down there, if you don't mind liking the video, it really helps, and consider subscribing for more of this kind of content, and I will see you in the next video. Bye-bye.